a abrupt emergency. We are wrestling.
Been a fan of AEW since day one.
Did you ever think that we'd be, talking about a topic like this?
We are Wrestling Extras!
What is up? We are Wrestling Maniacs out there worldwide. I'm the host with the most, the best one, Donnie, here with...
What's going on, everybody? Danny Huckins here, man. 1/3 of We Are Wrestling. Me and Donnie running solo this week for this extra. Bro, I mean, I'm pretty excited about what we're going to be talking about today, man.
I'm very excited, and I thought we were going to have to wait until Dynamite to get this news, but they ended up releasing this earlier today, and you and I, we get to cover it here on We Are Wrestling Extras. But before we cover all this news that we just got earlier today, if you're not a We Are Wrestling Maniac yet already, and you're not a part of the thousands of subscribers, the best way to support us is by hitting that subscribe button now, turning on the post notifications. Videos be coming out of nowhere like an RKO, and of course, you already know, the grind is real. And in addition, if you're listening to this We Are Wrestling Extra, or you're a casual listener to the We Are Wrestling podcast, we're available now on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So please give us a 5-star review and download the podcast and show your support.
Absolutely, man. You know, it's weird being in audio format because like we could be doing, for people that are just listening to us and not like watching us on YouTube, like we could be sitting butt-ass naked right now and nobody would fucking know.
Yeah, man, it's pretty weird being audio, but that's something I've really started to do a lot more now that I drive and I travel to a lot of independent wrestling shows and meet and greets. Always be listening to podcasts on Spotify. I know other people, they love Apple Podcasts and stuff, but hey, if you're an Apple Podcast guy, you can listen to us. If you're a Spotify guy, you can listen to us. There isn't a war.
Exactly, man. You make sure you guys, and I just found this out because I just did it a couple days ago. You can actually follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts to get a notification when we do post a new episode, man. So make sure you guys do that as well.
So you have a choice. You can either turn on the post notifications if you're watching this, or if you're listening, you can follow us.
Exactly, man. We're whores from a promotion. We appreciate it, and we love you guys for it. By the way, I do want to give a major shout out to all of our viewers, all of our listeners, and to us and our hard work, man, because we are less than 100 subscribers away from 4,000, bro.
4K.
Oh my God.
Absolutely nuts, man.
It's weird, man.
And it feels great, man. We have such an amazing audience. The We Are Wrestling Maniacs, some of the best people that we, get the opportunity to communicate with in the live streams. Love going through all the comments. I love our fan base, man.
I love it too, man. We have a lot of cool stuff.
Thousands!
We have a lot of cool stuff coming, and this is just the start, man. Like, who knows what the future is going to be holding?
Well, AEW's got some pretty cool shit coming out because they just released a statement on AEW Saturday Collision. And we've already knew like there was going to be another 2-hour show. We already knew it was going to be called Collision, but we never got the full details to it. And in this press release statement that I'm going to read to the We Are Wrestling Maniacs and yourself, they released this earlier today, and man, before I start reading this, what are your thoughts on the Collision colors and the logo? Because a lot of it resembles back to WCW Nitro.
I mean, you can tell in sort of like the way AEW is structured that they do take a lot of, inspiration from a lot of what WCW did back in the day. Not only are they, on Turner Broadcasting, and this is the first wrestling promotion to be on Turner since WCW back in like the 90s and early 2000s. So I think it's great. I do have to say that we knew that this was coming. We knew that AEW was going to be coming up with a new show. We have talked about it on past episodes. But we were unsure if it was going to be just like Rampage, if it was going to be a continuation of Dynamite. We didn't exactly know until today officially what it was going to be. Because I think we talked about on one of the most recent episodes of the podcast. I was like, if it's going to be a taped 1 hour show, I'm probably going to end up skipping it. It's probably not going to be on my radar. But if it's live in 2 hours, then it'll definitely make the bucket list of, priorities on the weekend, I guess.
Yeah, so, my thoughts on, the color scheme and, going with something similar to Nitro, I actually dig this logo. I think that they did a fantastic job with the branding of this. It's completely different from Dynamite, which I like because, of course, when Dynamite first came out, it had all the, colors of the rainbow splattering. Now
Mhm.
we have, more of like the red, white, and blue. But now with Collision, we have this nice, yellow and orange with the red. I really like it. And I think that for AEW to do that, it definitely takes a lot of balls because you already know they're going to get criticized for, copying WCW, even though I think that this is really cool.
I don't necessarily think it's copying WCW. It's paying homage to WCW and what WCW was. Because regardless of what people want to say about WCW, like back in the day, bro, they were number one for 83 weeks, but they were number two closely right behind WWF back in the day. So until now, until AEW came around, there was never a company as big as what WCW was. And I do feel like over the past 12 years or so, ever since the network came out, when people had more access to be able to watch it, I do feel like, WCW's fan base has grown because they do have access to be able to go back on the network and watch a lot of the old Nitros and Thunders. Remember when Thunder was on Thursday nights or whatever?
I do, and let me tell you why I think WCW is still very nostalgia and popular to this day. So, I was listening to the Major Wrestling Figure podcast, Matt Cardona, Brian Myers, and Smart Mark Sterling. And Smart Mark Sterling actually made a really good point here. Usually it's every 25 to 30 years is when something becomes nostalgia to people and they want to see it and
Mhm.
they remember the good times more than the bad times. And, with WWF in the 90s, with the new generation, there was a lot of shit, but a lot of people don't really talk about the shit because it was so long ago that people are thinking about the Hulk Hogan's, Ultimate Warriors, Macho Man's.
Mhm.
And with WCW and, WWF with the Attitude Era, the Monday Night Wars, even though it's nostalgia to us, it's starting to become more nostalgia to the wider audience. And I think that's why, I really like the logo a lot, like paying
I
homage. I
I do too.
really
It's
do.
like it's got a really nice, like sleek look to it. It does resemble a lot of old school stuff. But it also, I was on social media earlier, man. And somebody posted a photo of the classic Hulk Hogan with the yellow bandana and the orange or red shirt, and underneath they had the Collision logo on it. So a lot of people, show hasn't even begun, man, and people are already making fun of it and saying that Hulk Hogan is going to be running AEW Collision.
He's going to be running wild on Collision. Oh, man. The IWC. All
They're
right.
running
Well,
wild, bro.
with that being said, let's get into the statement that was released, by AEW here. So, TNT launches a second night of wrestling with AEW Collision, featuring headliners Thunder Rosa, Miro, Samoa Joe, Powerhouse Hobbs, and Andrade on Saturday, June 17th. So, TNT launches a second night of professional wrestling with a new tentpole series, AEW Collision, on Saturday, June 17th. It was announced today by Kathleen Flinch, Chairman and Chief Content Officer, U.S. Networks Group's Warner Bros. Discovery during the company's 2023 upfront presentation at Madison Square Gardens in New York City. This live 2-hour in-ring show will air every Saturday night from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and feature more wrestlers, more stories, and more action to super serve fans. AEW Collision will be featuring headliners, including the people I said earlier. In only 4 years following the launch of AEW Dynamite, AEW's footprint has been more than doubled across TNT and TBS. Along with AEW Dynamite Friday nights, AEW Rampage, the recent Follow doc, AEW All Access, and now AEW Collision, TNT and TBS deliver the best matches and the most entertaining moments in professional wrestling today. AEW has reached 23 million total viewers so far this year across all of its shows on TBS and TNT. We're doubling down on wrestling with AEW Collision, which gives fans 2 more hours every week, said Jason, President Turner Network, and all that other fun stuff. AEW's roster of talent has expanded so quickly that we felt it needed another night to bring our audience the epic rivalries, unforgettable matches, and stars they love to watch. Adding Collision to our program mix on TNT will allow us to satisfy the massive demand we felt from our hardcore fan base and be the ultimate complement to AEW Dynamite on TBS. And with the addition of AEW Collision on TNT, I'm extremely proud that Turner Network will be the home of Saturday Night Wrestling for the first time in more than 2 decades, said Tony Khan, CEO, GM, and head of creative at AEW. The debut of Collision is significant across numerous sectors, including television wrestling, entertainment, and sports, and reinforces AEW as a bold property we envisioned when we launched it in 2019. Collision will deliver live every Saturday night, more of what fans and viewers tell us they want. Athleticism, big personalities, exciting storylines, and hard-hitting wrestling action, all of which has been with AEW. So, before we, get into all of this, the one wrestling name that has shocked a lot of people is Andrade. How do you feel about AEW bringing back Andrade to Collision, potentially?
Well, he hasn't really necessarily been on AEW TV since he had that whole situation going on with Sammy Guevara in the backstage area. And then I just heard an article, I want to say like 3-4 weeks ago, about him recovering from some kind of minor shoulder surgery or whatever, so he was rehabbing that. I'm happy, man. Like, we're getting all these guys, powerhouse Hobbs. Hopefully he can be in a notable storyline. We got Andrade, we got Miro, obviously we're gonna be seeing the return of CM Punk, and obviously it just came out recently that CM Punk wants to have his first feud to be with Samoa Joe, somebody that he is grown to know as a frenemy. I guess you could say a friend and an enemy, especially back in their Ring of Honor days back in the day, way before they became huge, massive names in the world of pro wrestling.
Well, just to give the We Are Wrestling viewers and listeners a heads up, on the latest, episode of the We Are Wrestling podcast, 56, we did dive into the CM Punk and Samoa Joe rumors that are, speculating to happen within, this summer of AEW.
Exactly, man. So make sure you guys check that out. And it's a good episode, man. Even though I had to dip out halfway through, but it was a good episode. And Ben and Donnie, I'm pretty sure, took the reins and knocked that shit out of the park, man. Hit a home run.
But before you get into your thoughts on the whole statement now, with Andrade, I gotta say, I've been, I've been giving him a lot of criticism for,
Yep.
The way things have happened so far in his AEW run. When he signed to AEW, I wasn't the biggest fan of the signing because I wasn't really a big fan of his work in WWE. Even NXT, I really wasn't a big fan of him. Great in-ring talent, though. He's a great performer. but I just never really enjoyed, the storylines he was in, never really enjoyed his character work, his microphone work. And with AEW, I did really like what they were doing at first, the way they presented him. Loved how they had Chavo Guerrero with him, and eventually Vicky Guerrero, to then replacing her with this guy. I still don't even know his name. I believe he's with Roosh and 10. I think
Yeah.
it's like Jose, the assistant or something.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I felt like Andrade, was just not being used properly. He was just one of those former WWE guys and seemed like he didn't want to be in AEW anymore. So to see this, reports, I really hope his mindset did change. I really hope that, he wants to be in AEW for the right reasons. And we already know he's under contract for a couple of years. So he probably realized that, hey, I need to, I can't do anything sitting at home. So I have two options. One, sit out at home for the next couple of years, pout, complain, do nothing, or let me just ride this contract out, have some great matches, and just try to enjoy it while I'm under contract.
Exactly. And the thing with AEW is I feel like Tony Khan went on a little bit of a spending spree, and he signed a lot of guys really, really fast. A lot of the signings that I was really happy about, guys like Malachi, guys like CM Punk, guys like uh John Moxley, guys like Jericho, like these guys, right? I was happy to see them coming in because they weren't really being utilized, obviously in WWE. But I feel like with the amount of people you have on your roster, only having 2 hours of live television, that's like your primary viewership, it's hard to fit everybody in. But now that they have a second show, they have Rampage, which is an hour. That's going to be sort of like, remember back in the day when WWE had their show Metal? It was on like Saturday mornings or whatever. And it was like,
Yes.
they had like one or two dark matches. And then it would be sort of be like a recap of like Raw or Sunday Night Heat or something like that.
Yeah,
I
that's the
feel like,
approach I think they're going to take with Rampage.
I feel like that's what Rampage is a little bit. So now that they already got rid of Dark and Dark Elevation. We talked about that. They're having the second hour or the second 2 hour show live on Saturdays. I feel like that's gonna breathe new life into this company because one criticism that a lot of people have is the AEW is not that good when it comes to their storytelling aspect. And we always say it, man.
Mhm.
It's like beating a dead horse at this point. We always say it. WWE and AEW are two totally different things. One's sports entertainment, one's pro wrestling. But still, even though AEW is more so centered around pro wrestling, you do have to have the storytelling aspect behind, your superstars or whatever to get people invested in what you're actually doing on television.
And you
And I
know why
feel
you need to have that? The reason why you need to have stories you need to have these wrestlers for people to be invested in with these storylines and stuff, because that's how you sell a fight.
Mhm.
And in sports, that's how, you get all of these viewers. And why you get these iconic, fights, whether it's in, mixed martial arts or boxing. You have to sell a fight. You can't just throw two great pro wrestlers in the ring and expect there to be, 100,000 people buying that match. You need to give them a reason to. And
Yep.
AEW, some of the matches, they do give you that reason to spend $50 on a pay per view. But a lot of the times they just, throw shit on the wall and see what sticks. And you can't do that.
And I do feel like, and this might be a criticism that you have as well. It just seems like the minute they give somebody a title, they take them off TV. You know what I mean? Have you noticed that? Like the House of Black, they were red hot. They won the trios titles. They've only had one television match since they actually won the titles. And I'm talking about Dynamite. I
Mhm.
don't watch Rampage.
Well, they have been
S-
appearing though on Dynamite a little bit, but they do need to be in the ring more. I do agree with you on that.
I mean, it almost feels like they're doing the ass backwards. Like people that don't have titles should, you should focus more around people, your champions. You build the show around them, build storylines around them. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Because that's what adds prestige to your championships. If you have somebody win a title and then you don't see them for weeks on end, until like a pay-per-view comes up, I mean, it's going to be very hard for the fan base to get behind that champion.
And there's a reason why right now Orange Cassidy is very over with the All Atlantic Championship, because they're having him on TV every week, putting on these consistent wrestling matches.
Yep.
And they're very unpredictable because you're putting him in the ring against a guy like Daniel Garcia, where realistically, if we're analyzing and we're watching it, that can go either way because, of course,
Yep.
Daniel Garcia has had some big victories during his AEW run. He beat Bryan Danielson clean, and, he's had, programs with pretty big guys. And Orange Cassidy, of course, is one of the most popular acts in AEW, and he's been a reigning defending champion. So, like, the
Exactly.
matchups aren't even that bad either, and that's why a lot of people are getting invested in the All Atlantic Championship. And, of
And
course, MJF doing a fantastic job, with that AEW World Championship. Even though he doesn't wrestle a lot on TV, he wrestles when it matters, because one thing that he's doing on TV consistently is selling his fights.
exactly. And like I'm not like before like the marks come at me with like fucking pitchforks and shit. I'm not saying have all the champions, in matches every single week. But you need to have them involved in storylines. You need to have them on TV. You need to have them showcased. You need to have them in rings cut, in the ring cutting promos. You need to have them backstage. You need to have somebody that's really eager to want that title off of that person. That's what sets up a storyline.
Do you
You
know what I
know
really like about this, Danny?
what?
A lot of the times on AEW Dynamite, you can tell when they're in panic mode because there's
Hmm.
only 2 hours of television that they have. So they try to cram everything in. We get a lot of 15 to 30-second promos and vignettes at times. But
Hmm.
now having another show that's 2 hours long, I feel like we're not going to be having as much stuff crammed in. And I think that's really going to help guys like the Acclaimed. It's going to help guys like the House of Black, and it's going to really help, more people get over with the AEW audience that deserve
Exactly.
TV time.
Exactly. It's gonna allow storylines to breathe. It's gonna allow, storylines to play out. You don't have to rush anything because, we have a pay-per-view in a month, so we need to cram in as much as we can in 4 weeks. Doesn't
I'll
have to
tell
be
you my
like that.
only thing I'm concerned about. With this being announced on Saturdays, AEW Collision, the only thing I worry about is when WWE has a premiere live event,
Yeah,
because
that's a
they do have them on Saturdays now. So
that's a
what is that
huge.
going to mean for AEW?
I don't know. I still say, man, my original plan for this, and we discussed it. My original plan was to have AW
Collision
Collision
on
on
Thursdays.
on Thursday nights, and then move Ring of Honor because it's only an hour show. Move that to Saturdays.
Yep.
That's what should have been done. But I do feel like Tony Khan, he didn't necessarily want to step on the toes of anybody at Impact because obviously they have done some work with Impact in the past, whatever. So that maybe that could have been a reason.
Mhm.
But you know, very limited in time slots nowadays.
But then
You
again,
have
I get it too, because Raw and SmackDown, we have Raw on Mondays, SmackDown on Fridays, so you have more time to, add that suspense to what's going to happen at the next show.
and like
Because even like on Monday Night Raw, when they, advertised Roman Reigns for SmackDown, as a
mhm,
viewer, I want to go see what's going to happen now on Friday. And
yeah.
if you have it on the next day, that, excitement, that suspense is not going to be as good as it, waiting to clickbait the people. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, so what do you think is gonna happen as far as like we talked about, like a lot of WWE premium live events, they're gonna be on Saturdays now. Like we have Night of Champions the 27th Saturday. Luckily it's on in the afternoon.
Mhm.
So like shows like that you don't necessarily have to worry about. But like Money in the Bank and Backlash and
SummerSlam,
SummerSlam, WrestleMania, that's on
Royal
Saturday and
Rumble.
Sunday, Royal Rumble. Like, what do you do on those days? Do you have it moved over to like Sunday?
I don't know, but one thing that does concern me about it being on TNT as a basketball fan, because of course NBA, a lot of their games are showcased on TNT. So my only thing that I get worried about, because there are a lot of basketball games on Saturday nights, will it affect AEW Collision on TNT? Because sometimes they do have the games on Saturdays, I think playoffs and stuff. And I think AEW is running into this issue on Wednesdays at
Yeah.
times, and that's why they ended up moving to TBS. That's
Well,
the only thing that concerns me.
luckily for AEW, basketball and stuff like they have an off season, right? A couple of months. It's
Yep, they do.
basketball season. I think is primarily what during like winter. Like they
It's
start in like
usually
November.
fall. It's usually fall, winter, spring, usually.
Yeah. So you have all summer. You don't necessarily need to worry about that.
Mhm.
But it is going to be a little bit tricky. I the thing is,
Especially if
there's
it's live.
there's a lot of basketball fans. Obviously, you're one of them. But I do feel like there's a lot of pro wrestling fans that aren't necessarily into basketball. So
Mhm.
I don't think AW will be hit that hard. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Because WWE, like during like the playoffs and stuff like that, they still get around 2 million. Maybe
Oh, no,
1.7.
it has nothing to do with the viewership. I'm just worried about Collision because it's gonna be on Saturdays from 8 to 10.
Yeah.
What if NBA decides, well, let's put, this right now it's currently the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference Finals right now. Let's put the Celtics versus the Miami Heat on TNT Saturday at 8 o'clock.
Well, obviously because you
We
know,
saw this issue with Dynamite, and we have been seeing this issue with Rampage, but
well,
nobody cares about Rampage.
obviously with Turner, right? They had to sign off on this deal. So obviously, some kind of deal or whatever has been worked out already. They will knowing that this was, going to be a problematic issue, you know, uh they would have, changed the day. They would have done something. You know what I mean? So yeah, I don't know for sure, but I don't take these people as, being stupid, or doing something that's gonna diminish, their income when it comes to the show.
Mhm.
So there's that.
I
I don't
think
know.
this is what I'm gonna say here about all of this. As long as Tony Khan doesn't treat it as the B show, as long as AEW just keeps the foot on the gas. Because with Rampage, they did have the foot on the gas for probably the first like maybe 2 to 3 months. And then after that, they decided, all right, that's it. We can't do this anymore.
Mhm.
So I don't want that to happen with Collision. I want it to be at the same level as Dynamite. Obviously,
Yep.
Dynamite's going to probably be more popular than Collision because it's their, number one show, just like Raw for WWE was their number one show for the longest time until, the Fox deal happened with SmackDown. That was always the A show before, that big deal happened. I just don't want Collision to feel like Dark or Elevation. It can't
Yep.
be a show where you're going to have Samoa Joe versus a jobber. You can't have Powerhouse Hobbs go against a jobber. You can't have all your matches be somebody against a jobber. We need
Yep.
to have a solid 2 hour television show. We need to, continue to put all of these guys that are not being used, like a lot of the names that were headlined on this whole press release. We need to showcase them. And we need
I
to,
want to see
put on a great 2 hours of television.
I want to see like I want to see like backstage brawls. I want to see like things around storylines get intensified. Like like back in the Attitude Era, you would see somebody like get hit in the head in the sledgehammer, or get attacked backstage, and you didn't know who did it, or somebody would attack somebody, and then they would run away and get in a car and speed off, and then you would see somebody else go after him, kind of like, how Booker T and Steve Austin did the whole, grocery store deal. Like, I want to see stuff like that. I want to
I
see
miss that
stuff.
shit.
I want to see storylines, you got to make them intense to get people invested. Like, oh, that's why back in the day, SmackDown and Raw, bro, like, you had to watch every week. There was no, "Oh, I can't watch it this week." You had to sit your ass in front of that television from 8 to 9, from 8 to 11, or 9 to 11, or 8 to 10, or whatever it was, because you had to see what the fuck happened, like, the payoff of what happened the previous week or the previous couple days. Like, you had to, you know what I mean? There was no question about it,
It was
and
great
that's how
television.
I want this to feel. This can't be just a random, oh, we're going to put this guy against this guy and it's not going to make any sense. And people are going to be, you can't do that. You cannot fucking do that. Especially if you want people to take time out of their Saturday nights, bro, out of the weekend that they could be doing anything else. And you want them to sit for 2 hours and watch your show. You got to get people fucking invested in what the fuck is going on.
And I'm going to put this out there since you just mentioned that Saturday nights. With Collision, I will be probably doing a watch along with Danny for the very first episode because that Saturday for me is open. But a lot of my Saturdays are not opened. I go to a lot of independent wrestling shows. I, go to a lot of signings and stuff. But I will be doing Collision reactions on Sundays. Just
Yep.
like I do with, Monday Night Raw. I do them on Tuesdays. AEW, I'm able to do them the day of Wednesdays. And with SmackDown, I usually do my reactions on Saturdays in the morning.
And obviously, I watch the shows every week. So if something fucking astronomical happens, I'll be like, bro, you got to get the fuck on this.
Yep.
So,
And in my reactions, I'm always genuine with you guys. Like if Danny tells me like the whole Karrion Cross situation happened, he told me beforehand. I went on my reaction. I told him straight up, yep, I already know Karrion Cross is here. I don't bullshit when I do my reactions. They're 150% real and authentic.
yep. But
Just
it's
wanted
going
to
to
put
be
that
good.
out there with
It's going to
Collision.
be good, man. I'm looking forward to it. And I hope everybody is too. And, you know, TK really needs to buckle down and make this show worth it, especially if it's on a Saturday. So that's really all I got to say.
Absolutely, man. And I think that this really does have a lot of potential to be really good, but it also, has potential of being a dumpster fire. And I really hope that the show is really good. I think that they definitely have big plans for the show that are going to, create, storylines and, give more guys an opportunity because Miro's coming back. Andrade's coming back. Two guys that
CM
in the
Punk's coming
wrestling
back.
media were criticized for wanting to leave the promotion because they had nothing for them. So for these
Mhm.
guys to get off the couch and come back and now being a featured headliner on, Collision, that definitely shows you that AEW's got some big plans here. But before we close this off, there was one person that wasn't mentioned in this, press release statement, and that is CM Punk.
Mhm.
So, do you think that CM Punk isn't going to be, the face of Collision like, the reports have been, speculating for the past few months? Or do you think that they're trying to keep CM Punk under the radar so that when he comes back at Collision in Chicago, that it's more of a bigger feel to it?
Well, it hasn't been, put out there yet to a certain degree. Sean Ross Sapp and different people, in the space have, gotten information, and CM Punk is definitely going to be on the first episode. It's going to be in Chicago. It just makes sense. He has somewhat been promoted, but hasn't been promoted. Especially by TK.
Mhm.
Obviously, everybody knew that this press junket or whatever you want to say, was took place today in New York. So I feel like they did have to put a press release out, but I don't know. I don't know when this extra is going to be hitting the streams or whatever.
Before Dynamite tonight.
But TK does have an announcement tonight. CM Punk could be a part of that announcement. You never know. I feel like because just because he puts out a press release, it doesn't mean he has to give away everything. He's gonna want people to tune in to fucking Dynamite tonight. You know what I mean?
Honestly, I kind of hope that like the announcement is CM Punk because you could have CM Punk return tonight and swerve everybody because everybody thinks that, oh, CM Punk, he's coming back during, Chicago tapings for Collision. you can really swerve every single wrestling fan if you sneak them in there tonight and have them come out and that music hits.
I mean, it could. They've done it several times. They've done it to Adam Cole. If you watch the All Access show, nobody knew, except for
Huge
Britt
surprise.
and TK that he was going to be there that night. So they have been known primarily in AEW. They have been known to do that or whatever. I will say, out of WWE, AEW, they know how. Everybody that works there knows how to keep a secret. Like they don't. There's
Mhm.
if they don't want it out, it's not going to get out. I mean, look at the whole Brody Lee situation. You know what I mean? Nobody knew what the fuck was going on until you know it happened.
Even some of the returns that Triple H has been bringing back in WWE, they've been able to keep under the radar, which I really like because nowadays, like everything revolves around social media and our,
Yeah.
smartphones and telephones and cell phones. And I'm kind of glad that in pro wrestling we're able to keep some of these secrets, but it's kind of hard to make this a whole secret with CM Punk coming back because every time he comes back, it's always in Chicago. So I
Yeah.
really hope that they swerve us here. But I'm not too
I
worried. I'm not too worried though about CM Punk not being featured on the headlines. I think they're just trying to surprise everybody when he comes back.
Exactly, and last week on Dynamite, TK was hyping it up. I have a huge announcement you're gonna want to tune in for. If he gave away everything on this press release, nobody would feel the need to want to tune in tonight to figure out what else he had to say. I honestly do not think we still don't, they're promoting All In too, like it's, going out of style. Still have no idea where we can watch that. I personally, I don't have any inside, knowledge of this, but I personally think it's going to be on HBO Max because, they're talking about celebrating 100 years of Warner Brothers. It's like it makes sense.
It does make sense.
Usually they tell you like Fight or Bleacher Report, like they tell you ahead of time, like this is where you can watch it. I mean, we have yet to hear any kind of information about that. So we could be hearing about that. We could be hearing about CM Punk. We could be hearing more about Collision that hasn't been stated within this press release. There's so much there's so much knowledge we have, but yet we don't have at the same time. And if TK gave away everything in this press release, people won't feel inclined to watch the show tonight. And they're promoting it like TK has some groundbreaking stuff that he has to get off his chest.
That's right. TK is going to be a father. That's the announcement for tonight.
Hey man.
Nah, but here's the thing, man. Tune in to AEW tonight to find out, this big announcement for
I'll
Tony
be live
Khan.
doing a watch along on Dane Age Vlogs. Tune
It's
in if
going to
you
be
guys want.
fantastic. But one final thing before we close off this extra, since we're talking about all of this new AEW Collision news that just came out earlier today, I want to know, Danny, should AEW do a brand split with Dynamite and Collision?
No. For the simple fact is, one, you don't want to take viewers away from another show. You have to remember, it took, I want to say 10 years for WWE to do a brand split because, they started the brand split in 2002. WWE's technically been around since, the 70s. But Monday Night Raw and they didn't really start picking up and gaining momentum until 93. So I feel like if you do a hard brand split, it'll take people away from watching Dynamite. It'll take people away from watching Collision because if you have somebody on Collision that's not a Dynamite, they're not gonna watch Dynamite and vice versa. I don't think that'll be a good idea. But I do feel like you'll be able to have storylines, um, go over with each other. Like you'll have a massive situation happen on Dynamite. You can carry that over to Collision and vice versa. And I feel like having that 4 hours, you'll be able to get a lot more on television.
Yeah, so, my thoughts, I don't think that we need to have a hard brand split. I do got to 100% agree with that take. You just, made a great take right there. I think that, we don't need to have the brand split, but what we need for AEW to do is what we've been saying this whole time on this extra. We need them to just put 2 hours of solid, great storytelling, entertainment, television on Wednesdays and Saturdays. Here's what one thing I do want to.
Last week's Dynamite was phenomenal. If you could do that every week, you'd have a fucking A+ show.
So here's what I want to say now. about all of this. I think that, with AEW, if you're a talent, they should not have a talent wrestle on both Dynamite and Collision. We need to, keep it spread out with
Mhm.
the roster. Like, I do want to see some people be consistently just on Collision, which I think is what's going to happen, and some people consistently on Dynamite. But here's the thing. I want there to be a balance with the roster because morale is everything. And we need all of these guys to be on the same page and have the same goal. And that is to, take AEW off to that next level. And
Mhm.
in order to get to that next level, we need everybody on the same page. And having, the same guys, on both, Dynamite and Collision, having Orange Cassidy defend that title twice cannot happen. Save that for one of the shows. And then if you want to have
Yep.
a segment or something with him on the other show, go ahead. But we can't take away certain TV time from certain people. We need to really take advantage of the 5 hours of television that we're getting with, Dynamite, Rampage, and Collision. Mostly 4
Exactly.
hours because, of course, nobody cares about Rampage that much.
Exactly. I do feel like Rampage should almost be like the television version of like Dark. I do feel like a lot of the enhancement talent and talent you want to bring in should definitely be on Rampage. That way they can get some exposure. They can get used to working in front of an
See if
audience.
they get a reaction.
Exactly. I don't want to see, it seems like every week, Wardlow or Powerhouse Hobbs, like they're always wrestling jobbers, and that's fine and dandy once in a while, but I don't want it doesn't make them look tough if it's a weekly thing every single week. Oh, he's gonna beat a jobber in fucking 2 minutes. Like, what's impressive about that? If you space it out, cool, fine. It'll help people. A lot of those jobbers and a lot of those enhancement talent, they know how to sell. They know how to put these guys over and make them look really strong. But I do feel like that should be saved for a show like Rampage.
And that's why we don't need a brand split at all because like, we want to keep the championships relevant. Like, MJ, I think there should only be one world heavyweight champion. There
Yeah.
should only be one tag team champion. There should be one women's world championship. And with a brand split, you can't really do that, which I think AEW, if they did do a brand split, they wouldn't have the championships on just one brand. I think that they would, go to both, but still, AEW, I think, is not in a position yet to do something like that. They need to
Exactly.
continue to, build solid storylines for these pay-per-views, sell these fights. And
Mhm.
with Collision, with an extra 2 hours of television, you can do that. You're giving more guys an opportunity to, connect with the audience. You're giving more guys an opportunity that maybe aren't getting that chance. One person in particular, for me, that I've been really wanting AEW to push, Kip Sabian. Like, there's a
Mhm.
lot of guys on that roster that aren't being utilized. And with Collision, I really hope that opens the door for more talent and it helps AEW out overall.
And another thing that I want to, this might be a little bit nitpicky, to a lot of people, but another thing that I do want to see is I want to see a different set for Collision. I don't want it to
Yes.
have the same Dynamite set. I want them to have, their separate identities, kind of like how SmackDown and Raw, when Raw had like the pillars or whatever, and Raw and SmackDown had like the fist or whatever. I want them to have their own identity. I don't want Collision to feel like, oh, it's Dynamite 2.0. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so I definitely have to agree on that. I think it will have its own identity. That's one thing, like with this whole, doing the tapings on Wednesdays for Dynamite and then doing the tapings on Saturdays for Collision. We're gonna get two completely different sets. I think that production trucks, I think that there are gonna be two different, production trucks. I think the only time that they're in the same area is going to be around a pay-per-view time so that you
Hmm.
could do a taping on Wednesday, Thursday, and then, Friday or Saturday or Sunday or whatever. So I
Yep.
think there is going to be a whole different identity to it. Like the logos are completely different. Collision has a different look to it already than Dynamite, and it hasn't even started yet.
Exactly.
And I
It's gonna
think
be good, man.
TK, he's a wrestling fan, and I think he knows that having two different sets is very important for, the show's identity.
Exactly. You got to separate them. You can't, you need to be like, yes, this is Collision, this is Dynamite. Yeah, same company, two different shows. So that's what
Mhm.
I want. Like I said, a little bit nitpicky, but it's definitely what I want to see, especially if you're going to
Yeah.
be having a second 2-hour show that's going to be like your SmackDown, I guess you could say.
Yeah. So to the We Are Wrestling Maniacs that tuned in, listened, or watched this extra, let us know in the comment section below your thoughts on, the whole AEW Collision news that came out. What do you think Tony Khan is going to be announcing tonight on Dynamite? If you guys enjoyed this extra, make sure to smash that like button now. If you're not a We Are Wrestling Maniac yet already, subscribe or follow us. And if you want to support us, the links are down in the YouTube descriptions below. You can go follow Danny and I on our social medias and other YouTube pages. All that down below. In addition, if you're listening to this, if you want to give us, a 5-star review and, give us that 5-star, comment it down below. We'll start featuring them on the podcast. And in addition, you want shorter clips of the podcast, go to our social medias, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. All the links down below. But of course, to all the We Are Wrestling Maniacs out there worldwide, we are taking over. Peace.
Thank you for almost 4,000 subscribers.
We are Wrestling Extra.